Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Squat Cobbler. I forgot my name. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Joining me, as always.
Hi, everybody. I remembered my name. This is Kelly at
Say no,
Kelly.
you didn't. That was a
Pause,
pause.
pausing for effect. At KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram, and both Dr. What's His Name and I would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, hit the notifications, take a gander at our t-shirts. We greatly appreciate it. And anything to add there? I just had to get it out. I don't get that out very often, so I don't have a good finish. And please do that.
I knew we shouldn't have done all those hallucinogens before the show tonight.
It's a bad thing. So.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about one of our favorite topics, Arcade1Up leaks. They have a terrible, terrible reputation for this. It's not, a lot of it is the fault of retailers like this. Retailers, putting up product pages that are publicly searchable, even if they're not advertising them, are still searchable, and people are finding these and posting them. The retailers pull them down. Most of the time, though, I do think it works in Arcade1Up's favor because it helps build buzz around whatever's coming out. It has hurt them, though, like the SNK cabinet, which ended up going to Unico, a company that they'd worked with on some other products instead of Arcade1Up. So a few cabinets were leaked. The one that interests me the most, though, is, so I've been anxiously awaiting a light gun cabinet. And for me, the one that I was holding out for, Buck Hunter, came out. And for anyone who doesn't know, light guns don't work until recently. Light guns do not work on flat screen monitors. So you can use like a tracking bar the way that the Wii does, but you're not actually pointing at the screen. You're pointing at the tracking bar. So it's a little bit off. It's not quite the same aiming and consistency. Obviously, putting a giant CRTV monitor in your cabinet is not only going to take up more room in your home, it's going to make your cabinet a lot heavier, more cumbersome to move around. But they managed to crack that with the Big Buck Hunter cabinet and the Big Buck World cabinet that they've done. And then nothing. They promised more shooting games, and we haven't seen anything else yet. Now, where are you at on shooting games, sir?
So I enjoy them quite a bit. It's a nice different form factor in an arcade. To go to an arcade and you're playing a bunch of different stuff. To kind of jump over to one of those. So and I like both the true blue light gun kind of shooting games. Those are tremendously fun. I also like kind of a notch back from that. And I mentioned this on the show recently, Battlezone. I'm a huge Battlezone fan. That's your lowest end graphics and your basics, but it's a little bit of the same thing. But it's not the rapid fire type of stuff you get with a lot of these other games. But I certainly enjoy them as a diversion. I think they're some of the kind of most fun and unique gameplay in an arcade.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I was holding out for House of the Dead, which doesn't look like it's going to happen, at least not for the original House of the Dead. Turns out from people behind the game, they've been talking to different retro gaming sites and saying a lot of the assets of the original House of the Dead are lost. So beyond that, I was holding out for a Terminator 2 cabinet, and it looks like that is coming with a very high price tag, but it turns out that is a Canadian site that it was leaked on, so not quite that high of a price tag. I believe it was 800 and something was the advertised price
and
on
that's 800 in bones and shells, right?
Yeah,
that's what Canadians use. Yeah.
So, okay. So that's like high sixes, I believe, in our money. So still expensive, still more than your traditional Arcade1Up cabinet, but again, form factor wise, it makes sense to me. Some people have already pointed out, though, some potential issues, I guess, depending on your feelings about it with this cabinet, which is the image that was leaked. The guns have wires on the back of them, which means that they are light guns, which again, Arcade1Up has cracked this light gun thing, so that's great. Except Terminator 2 wasn't a light gun cabinet. The guns weren't light guns. They had potentiometers in them. So they basically worked like a mouse. And as you moved it around, the cursor on the screen, as you rotated the gun from side to side and turned it, it matched the movements of the cursor on the screen. So it was actually not a light gun. So this has people speculating that this has been turned into a light gun game for the home version of it, when the original was not.
So and that's what we had chatted a little bit before the show, because I had some questions on. I'm not recalling Terminator 2 gaming as well. So the initial, the original version, the gun's basically kind of on a pivot or a turret, and you're kind of moving that, and it's acting more like a mouse than a light gun. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the actual programming of it, there's a potentiometer in there that essentially is moving the targeting on the screen the same way a mouse works.
Huh.
So it's good because it's incredibly accurate compared to a lot of other shooting games or even light gun games. So it's one of the things that made the game kind of stand out, was the slightly different approach to it of the mounted gun that you can pivot back and forth and move your cursor around with. This appears to have wires off of the back of the two guns, meaning they are light guns. I don't know how much that would really affect the gameplay of it, but I am curious now.
Yeah. I don't know which you would tend to be more accurate with, and which one you as an individual player are gonna end up being more accurate with, and which ones just perform more reliably and predictably for accuracy. I could see that the original version could actually be superior.
That's what a lot of people are saying, that they feel like you got more accuracy out of that because of the way it was set up, and that you're going to be sacrificing some of that on this home version now. So that is one concern that I would have about it. And again, I'm a huge fan of this game, so I feel like if that's the only thing, I'm probably still going to get it. I have been wanting a shooting cabinet. It was the one that I mentioned next to House of the Dead. Those were the two I was looking for, so probably still going to get it. My only other thing is it is a lot, and we talked on another show, shipping costs and things like that have been going up. I understand you're getting a lot more with this because two guns, whether the light guns or not, the two guns and everything with it. I think you're going to run into a similar problem that they had with Ninja Turtles, though, or the upcoming Simpsons cabinet, as far as what other games do you put on this? Terminator is a big brand. They're not going to let you just throw other games on there. That was the issue they had with Turtles. A lot of people complained that it only had the two major Turtles arcade games on there. I personally didn't mind because it was more about the 4-player cabinet, and I love both of those games. They're two of my favorite arcade games. I understand when people are saying that when most Arcade1Up cabinets come with at least 3 or 4 games, some as many as 12 games on there.
Yeah, with going with I guess it probably doesn't matter a ton whether it's a light gun or the mounted one, in terms of does that open you up to more or less. But it is interesting from a brand perspective. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, this is the cabinet where I play Terminator and Duck Hunter. It's gonna be right. It's gonna be a little trickier from that standpoint.
And that was the issue that they ran into with Turtles, because a lot of other people were, why isn't X-Men with it, or Simpsons or something like that? Well, those other large brands don't want to mingle with other brands. They don't want to dilute their brand and fight over who's going to be the main branded, property on there. So there's absolutely no way Terminator is not going to be, so what's going to go with that game? What's even a second game going to be? There were other Terminator shooting games. So that's the only thing that I can think of. Maybe another Terminator game, but I can't imagine what else would go with it. So it's really going to come down to what's paired with it. I don't know if just Terminator 2 is enough to make me pull that big of a price tag trigger on there.
Yeah, it would certainly help the cause if there were multiple games on there. It'll be interesting, and it's the whole. So At Games has cracked the light gun thing. I think, Arcade1Up has. At Games, I still think, is monkeying around with it a little bit. They're kind of a little more in doing it like the Nintendo Wii. Yeah, that's most of your options right now for that. But I'm tempted to kind of go try one of those aftermarket things out, because Zombie Raid is an awesome game available on coin ops. Played on my Legends quite a bit, but you've got to play it with the trackball, and um, it's just not quite the same play as a true shooter game. So we'll have to see on that. And you mentioned the Simpsons and leaks, and so kind of both of those. It appears that while they started to make a lot of noise about the Simpsons game, and when we talked about it, the trackball caught our eye because that was an indication that Simpsons Golf was going to be on there, and that would have been a very cool addition, or will be a very cool addition. But it also appears to maybe be the fly in the ointment right now that they've kind of pulled way back on kind of talking much about it as they sort. I don't know if it's licensing stuff or whatever, but there appears to be something not quite buttoned up with Simpsons, and so you're seeing more on a couple of these other new cool things, either intentionally or through leaks. But you're hearing a little bit less on Simpsons, which is kind of a disappointment because that was another one that you start to look at the value proposition of the Simpsons arcade game, which is amazing, and then a dedicated cabinet for that, very cool. A couple other Simpson games on it, and then throw in Simpsons Golf, and you got a pretty entertaining cabinet.
Yeah, and again, it makes sense with the branding because there is a lot of Simpsons games, so they can throw more Simpsons titles on there. Terminator is really what's throwing me of what else is going to be on there. If it's just Terminator 2, that's a real hard decision to make.
It's a big price tag for
Yeah. Now, even if it's the other Terminator games that are on there, that's fine. I'm probably really honestly not going to play them much. I'm mainly going to play Terminator 2, but I'll feel better that they're on there. And I got something else.
I could have been playing these two if I wanted to.
Yeah. I could play Terminator 3. I mean, I don't want to, but I could.
Well, that's so kind of tied in all of this space. Tron's out there as well as the cabinet. Now, I find it a little interesting that if there was going to be a cabinet that was a standalone, you get what you pay. It is basically it's the Tron machine, and that's all it is. That's one of the games that I think we can almost sustain that because it has a very particular controller. It's that combination joystick trigger combination of things, which is critical for some of the levels. And then the fact that the Tron game is really this series of 4 games where you're going through different challenges and those types of things, so that you do actually get the variety. But to me, I guess I would be less angsty about, I've only got Tron on this Tron machine, because I think it almost can stand up on its own given the uniqueness of its controller and the fact that it's got these very kind of segmented but connected games and levels for you to go and achieve. What do you think about that?
That makes sense to me. That is something that could essentially stand on its own. I don't know what you would pair with Tron, to be honest with you, that would make sense. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
So there was at least one other Tron property, Tron discs. So it was kind of you're throwing the disc.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Okay. So I mean, you could stay in the theme that way, but I don't recall any other big titles. I knew that was the other kind of really big one that was out there, but that would be it. And you could use because there's a lot of flexibility to how that Tron joystick can let you play. I guess you could probably get by with that. So that could be an additional one there, but it's just the Tron, the classic Tron game set, whatever, just stands up really well. And it's nice aftermarket again for the Legends Ultimate. You can get somebody's, an entrepreneur has put together a pretty darn screen accurate Tron joystick that for the At Games control deck. What you're seeing most people do is take the Player 2 joystick and swap in the Tron joystick on that one. And then when they're playing Tron, they just make that the dominant controller. and play with that. And then with someone's, it still works as a joystick if you want to. Um, yeah, so because I played Tron on my Legends Ultimate, and again, it's a little bit like Zombie Raid in that there's a couple levels. It's like, I don't know. I mean, that game's it's got the spinner, the trackball, joysticks, buttons. So you've got a lot of ways to get by it, but it's a strange combination of the spinner and the trackball to simulate what you do with the joystick, the original Tron joystick. It's difficult. So it's not nearly as enjoyable gameplay as doing it with the actual joystick.
That definitely makes sense. And it just occurred to me something they could pair with Terminator. Revolution X, the Aerosmith game.
Okay. I'm not familiar.
It's a hated game among a lot of people. I would argue it's not as bad as people make it sound like it is. But it's actually built off of the Terminator 2 engine, and the cabinet is identical. You use the same guns and everything. But Aerosmith is like kidnapped or something, and you have to save them. It's stupid,
Yeah.
but it is mindless, fun shooting game though. So
Now, if they were kidnapped by Hanson, I could get behind that.
so I want to say they were kidnapped by like a dominatrix or something like that. That's how I remember it anyway. So that's what I'm sticking with.
So most of the game you're trying to save them, and most of the game they're going like, "Go away, go away.
It's not bad. Just 10 more minutes.
We're fine. We're fine."
I remember in the arcade, and then I remember playing it. So it was ported to like all of the consoles of the time. I think before, I assume it's something they started working on right away with the assumption that this game is just going to be an enormous success and people are going to love it because it wasn't well received. So, and then it hit every possible console that you could sort of play the game on. And I say sort of because it hit Super Nintendo and Genesis, even though CD-ROM platforms were available at that time. So you can imagine what this looked like and played like without a light gun at all, trying to do it with the controllers. Not great.
So sorry in advance, but I'll check my Super Console X and see if that's. I'm
If you
sure
can play,
it probably
I
is.
don't play any of the console versions, or if you have to, the PlayStation version's okay. It's still missing a lot from the arcade game. But I mean, it is unplayable on the 16-bit consoles. It looks terrible. It's missing most of what made so bizarre, of course, because it's an Aerosmith tie-in. There's weird clips of Aerosmith throughout the game, and it plays Aerosmith music throughout the game. So if that's a positive or negative for anybody who's watching this, depending on where you stand, there's a bunch of Aerosmith songs in it, which for the Super Nintendo and Genesis one becomes like a 4-bar loop of like a chiptune Aerosmith-esque thing that plays throughout the whole game instead of like an album's worth of actual Aerosmith songs. So at least on the PlayStation 1, you get Aerosmith songs and the clips of the band. Doesn't look or sound like the arcade game, but you at least get the idea of what's supposed to be happening.
Cool. Excellent.
On your working Super Console X.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So any other stuff cooking there on Arcade1Up we want to catch through this week?
Well, there was another cocktail table that's
right.
leaked. And that is a Marvel vs. Capcom cocktail table. Can't speak.
Don't know your name.
I know. This is not my episode.
No.
I've been wanting a cocktail table. My problem is the first round of them looked great, particularly the Capcom one. And they have the all black editions of them. Apparently they're very short though. The first round that they had done. So what most people were doing were buying these aftermarket sort of extenders for them so that you're not hunched over playing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not unusually tall, but they're watching reviews of it, people who were shorter than me struggling to play it because it was so short. That's not fun. I don't want to do that. So more recently they came out with a Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man, I mean, cocktail table, because there was a Pac-Man already, a Miss Pac-Man cocktail table that apparently was a few inches higher, and people said was a vast improvement. Still not quite there though, but the specs of this one have that at another few inches higher. So it looks like they've finally corrected this height issue with the cocktail table. So curious to see what games are going to end up on it. If there's a good selection of Street Fighter games, I might be going with that instead of maybe the Big Blue, but we'll see. What about you and a cocktail table, sir?
So I have to toy around a little bit to see if I got the floor space for it, but I have always enjoyed them. I mean, it is a nice uh, way, particularly for two-player kind of stuff going on. It can be a really kind of cool way to do that. And you can do it standing up at an arcade system, but that just kind of across the table, controllers on both sides, the joysticks on both sides, the screen flipping back and forth that you do that, or a common screen and you're going against each other. Fun stuff. So, I mean, I kind of always like the form factor. It's a nice little different one. It would be, but for hours and hours, if it's sustained gaming, probably not the platform I go with, but for, social setting, and a little bit of fun competition, all that, tempting. And I do like the form factor a lot. You just got to kind of have the right one. It has to be the right height. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
And then it's the right height. Then you just got to have the right kind of layout for that to make sense. Because ultimately that requires a bigger footprint than about anything we've talked about, except Legends Pinball.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the height thing is really what throws me. And like I said, the Capcom cocktail table looks incredible, especially the black edition of it. Looks great. The great selection of games. But I don't want to buy all these aftermarket products that I need to attach to it just so I don't hurt my back playing it. It kind of defeats the whole thing for me. So I do like that they seem to have finally corrected that. Now they did have that Pong bar top table.
Yeah, that looked kind of
So
cool.
that's cool. I would love them to do that form factor with something like Capcom games or something along those lines.
Yeah, that looked really cool. And it would be nice to, because I mean, it lends itself well. Pong's a good kind of game to play on that platform. But Capcom, some of the Capcom stuff, some of the Marvel stuff would even be better on that format. So that would be a pretty cool thing. But boy, I would imagine that would carry with it between the licensing and then just what you've got to invest to make one of those things work from a material standpoint. That would not be inexpensive.
No, yeah, that would definitely be something that would be on the pricier side. I feel like for something like that, though, I could justify investing a little more into something like that because it is, I know it's, they make furniture kind of thing. It is a piece of furniture at that point that you're purchasing. So.
Yep. Serves a couple purposes and it'd be, pretty cool.
So yeah, all really interesting stuff. I'll be curious to see what happens as we get closer to the releases, particularly to see, what other games might be paired with the cocktail cabinet and Tron and Terminator.
Yep, that'll be cool. And all our fans need to stay tuned because underneath the Bog Panda label, we will have a light gun hunting the Hansons game coming out where you can pursue, track, and terminate the Hanson musical act because it needs to be done. The war continues.
The war on Hanson.
The war on Hanson. We have not forgot. We will never forget.
All right. Well, unless you have anything to add, sir, I think that can wrap this one up.
Sounds good. Please subscribe. Boo Hanson.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.